Today's episode, we're going to be talking to you about the story. We're actually going to be meeting with this gentleman who bought his Honda Jet with Bitcoin. So we're going to hear that story. We're going to be meeting with Jonathan Schaff. He is based in Bozeman, Montana, United States. He's one of the youngest Honda Jet owners in the world. So he's going to be telling us a story of how he started his career in tech by starting to work for a credit card company, started to notice certain trends, then he got into online gambling business and discovered Bitcoin, and how he then very early on understood that this was here to stay. So he invested in Bitcoin, made a lot of money, and bought himself a Honda Jet with Bitcoin, and then took the Bitcoin money and invested it into real estate. So he's going to talk to us about Bitcoin. He's going to talk to us about his real estate business that he's building and how he uses the Honda Jet to do this, and also his other aeroplane. He has a Piper prop jet, which is the first airplane that he bought. So he actually has two airplanes. So we'll hear this and lots more from our meeting with John Schaff. He's a very interesting guy. So if you haven't subscribed to Biz Jet TV, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, comments. Also, we love to hear from you. And get yourself a copy of The Quantum Economy. Yes, my book is out. So you want to click on the link below and get yourself a copy. And also subscribe to my newsletter, which comes out every week now. Lots of information there about business aviation on the newsletter, and also check out my articles in Av Buyer magazine. You can click on the link below. I'm writing an article a month in here, and very interesting. Lots of information about private aviation in here. There's also a few aircraft for sale in there too, so I'm sure you'll enjoy that. So let's get into the interview now with John Schaff. Off we go. During high school, what kind of jobs did you do afterwards in university, and how did your career start, basically?
No, I know as of a year ago, I was the youngest owner, an operator. Now things might have changed in the last year. I don't know, but that's at least what Hannah tells me. So, so high school, I went outside Philadelphia. I went to Emory University, econ and chem, pre-med major, wanted to be a doctor, and somehow found myself at Capital One doing. I helped design the mobile app. We didn't have a mobile app actually when I was there.
So you went from
crazy.
Also being a doctor to doing a mobile app for Capital One. That's interesting.
Yeah, I did all the pre-med courses. I was ready to go to med school, and I wasn't, but something wasn't ready. So I part of me wasn't ready, and it probably was honestly the best decision I made. I wasn't cut out for it. So, Capital One helped design the mobile app, and we also did remote deposit capture. But at Capital One, I saw a lot of issues with credit cards and chargebacks and a lot of all that other stuff. But I was there for 4 years. Okay. And during that time, I developed with a buddy, we kind of got into sports gambling. Okay. And we started beating offshore books and sports books and stuff like that, and offshore casinos. And when we would get paid with a check or even a wire, and they saw that we were sharp and we were beating them, they would withdraw that. Even up to 90 days later, even maybe up to 6 months later, if it was a check, they could figure out how to reject that payment. Oh. And but when we got paid, this was about 2012. When we got paid in something called Bitcoin, as I thought it was pronounced at the time, it was a one-way transaction. It was good as cash. Like, we didn't have to get worried about being charged back, essentially. That thing, it turned out it was pronounced Bitcoin. Now everyone's heard of it. And I started believing in it pretty heavy, and opened up Bitcoin ATMs in Philly and New Jersey, and invested my time, and ended up quitting Capital One. And went full time into Bitcoin, developed a margin lending bot, which basically, if someone wants to go on margin, they would have to borrow the underlying asset, which is in normal exchanges, if in stocks, they don't actually have to borrow underlying asset to short or to go long, but created a margin lending bot, and that did well for a bit. And then when the media, I think my first property I bought was in 2017, started diversifying into real estate. And I had, since we're talking about planes, I guess I was in San Francisco. I shared a Mooney, half share of a Mooney 1969 Mooney M20F. Yeah. Then I went to Bonanza, and then that couldn't find any icing in Montana where I was then. And so I bought a turboprop, Piper jet prop, which is like cut the nose off of Malibu. and
Yeah.
put on a PT6, and that's a pretty cool plane. I still have that plane,
Yeah. Oh,
but
good.
yeah, figured I'd stretch myself, and I bought a Honda Jet in 2021,
Yeah.
and probably the best deal that's ever been. I don't think I could afford a Honda Jet now, the meteor price increase, but I am impressed with it every time I fly it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really, your experience with Capital One is what allowed you to start to understand payments and everything, and then you
Yep.
fell on this Bitcoin thing almost by chance when those people started to pay you in Bitcoin, as you called it. And then you figured, well, with my experience with Capital One, this Bitcoin, it seems like it's the future.
Oh
And
yeah, I mean, we in Capital One, we saw chargebacks were a big issue at Capital One. I mean, when you're a merchant and you take credit card payments, those are, you can't trust that. I mean, in high value, high risk transactions, credit cards are really risky. Art transactions, where once you give that product and you can't replace it and there's no recourse, they charge back on the card, and that's the merchant's problem. So we saw that at Capital One. I saw the difference. I don't know if now chip is very common, but back then chip, it was all swipe. And what chip did was it now made the the risk on the merchant. So if the merchant took a bad card, that's on the merchant. It wasn't on the credit card company anymore. And that was what chip did. Yeah, that definitely helped. Came in from the payment side into crypto.
yeah, so you got into real estate. What made you? So you sold a lot of your crypto, and you thought, I'll pour it into houses. What did you buy? Houses, apartments? What was your initial strategy with real estate?
Yeah, good question. I specialize in short
Rentals.
term rental real estate. I don't know why I had
So is that
so
like
vacation
holiday
rentals,
rentals or Airbnb? Or both?
Airbnb, Barebow, short-term rentals, and vacation destinations. Now you might see in the news, oh wow,
Yeah.
short-term rentals are down. Yes, people aren't going to Denver anymore and staying in an Airbnb. They'd rather stay in a hotel. But if you want a lake house, I mean, those kind of vacation rentals have been around before Airbnb and Vrbo.
Yeah.
So that's what I specialize in. We are in the New West, meaning Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Sedona, Arizona, Lake Tahoe, areas like that, Big Sky, Montana, Bozeman. That's where we are right now. So those kind of areas still do really well.
So what do you
And
do? You
people are
buy a
still
single family home? Do you buy a house or apartment or a mix of both?
mix of condos and single family homes, mostly single family homes, because our strategy is approachable luxury. So
Yeah.
if you really nice place, but if you divide it up by the number of people, it's still cheaper than a hotel room.
Yes.
And that's pretty, even if the economy turns, people are still going to go on vacation and they're going to look for deals. And now, and that strategy works even with a downturn. Now with the rates going up, our acquisitions have definitely slowed down. We're being more picky.
Okay.
But it still can pencil out. And if it pencils out with the rates at 7%, when you refi it at 4%, it'll work even better. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, good. So when you say, so you're aiming for people like two families that decide to go on a vacation together and they'll rent one of your houses, and there's like 8 of them, instead of going into 8 hotel rooms, that they rent the house. That's the kind of property that you've invested in.
Yeah. We look for properties with four or more bedrooms.
Yeah.
Strategies. Yeah, it's mainly meant for families or gatherings and people that want a little. It's not like super luxury.
Yeah.
There's super luxury out there, like Airbnb Lux. When you're looking at 20,000 a night, rentals. Our rentals are roughly around 1,000 a night, but it's still cheaper than a hotel room. Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, and the area that you're concentrating in is the western part of the United States.
Yeah, New West. Yeah.
So tell us about, so obviously you're using your jet to go out and do deals. So tell us about a couple of situations where if you hadn't had the jet, you wouldn't have done the deal. Yeah. Tell us this.
Oh boy. Well, there's a bunch of investors that we had over in Bozeman, and we wanted to show some of our properties because they were looking to invest and for us to grow. We went from, I was actually just doing my logbook and I saw these. We went from Bozeman to Salt Lake to Lake Tahoe we stopped in Seattle and Coeur d'Alene. I mean, and this was all in one day. I mean, it was probably not making the right.
Look at houses, or you stopped for fuel? No, you stopped to look at houses.
No, look at houses. No, the Honda Jet can make it anywhere in the West Coast. The Honda Jet can make it. No, we stopped to look at to either pick up someone to look to potential investors to look at the houses we stopped and I mean the amount of stops that we made and how easy the Honda Jet is to just get going. I mean, from I can get initialized within 5 minutes, and then it's ready. It is, and the dispatch rate. I've never had to. I can tell you exactly. I have about 800 hours in a Honda Jet as PIC in my Honda Jet, and I have yet to not go because of an issue.
You did these hours in 2 years or 3 years?
2 years. I've been
flying
a ton.
Flying for a private airplane.
Yeah. I just had to get the 1,200 hour on my plane done. So every 600 hours in the Honda Jet, it's a big inspection. They tear it all apart, like to the bones, and that's the phase D or something like that. That's equivalent, but that's called a 600 hour for the Honda Jet. I just had that done.
Oh, okay, good. So you're not only investing on your own in real estate, you've got partners that you team up with, because you mentioned investors. So it's not just you.
So for some properties, yeah.
Okay.
It depends.
So these people,
we're looking to expand.
These guys don't have a private jet, but you do.
Correct. Actually, it's seen as a big plus because we can get to the areas very quickly. So most areas that we like to purchase in are accessible by an airport. It doesn't have to be also, by the way, other than Salt Lake, all these areas they did not have a commercial operation. So not only could we couldn't do it even if we're taking commercial.
You live in Salt Lake.
The schedule.
You live in Salt Lake.
Bozeman, Montana. There is commercial operation in Bozeman, but even though aside from the schedule, let's say the scheduling worked out, I mean, Sedona, Coeur d'Alene, you could all those areas. There's an airport nearby, but there's no commercial operations.
If you're in Salt Lake, you wouldn't have a problem because Salt Lake City you can get to anywhere. But yeah, you're right. From Bozeman, Montana. Yeah.
Well, there's no commercial operations into Sedona, Arizona. Where the properties are. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, you'd have to go to Spokane, which is an hour and a half drive. That's the nearest commercial. So we're able to pick, and I do pick properties that are close to airports, but not necessarily commercial properties. Sedona, Arizona, the house is 10 minutes away from the airport. You can actually see the airport Mesa from the house. So that's where I pick because they're just very easily accessible with a plane, private jet or a propeller plane, just any. Now, the one thing the Honda Jet has is that it does need a more runway than the turboprop. It just does. So it just depends, and also in poor weather. In poor weather, that's something to be considered too. How long the runway is and contaminated runway.
So you kept the other airplane then? So you got both?
I do. Yeah. The other one is a little bit more fun. It's like more of an airplane. Like it's fully manual. It doesn't. The Honda Jet is just so nice to fly, and definitely you feel the duplicate systems and two engines versus one, and it's a lot quicker. It's just a slightly different mission.
Yeah. So when you fly the Honda Jet, do you always fly on your own, or you have another pilot with you?
Sometimes if my friend happens to be a pilot, I'll have another pilot, but generally I am PIC and I'm single pilot operations. It is, even the lights are automatic, like getting on to the runway, the lights turn on automatically. I don't, maybe the Phenom 300 is like that, but I don't know any other plane that's like that in that. So the workload is super low. That's why it's kind of fun to challenge myself with a jet prop, because it feels like flying, versus the Honda Jet is super easy. The one thing is just the ground operations are just a little bit funky, but after 100 or 200 hours, it's pretty You got it down. It's just that initial phrase. That's why. So I do what like we are see there. There have been excursions with Honda jets and issues of people going off the side of the runway or going out of in the end of the runway. Usually contaminated conditions, short field, new pilot. Those are the three conditions that make that. And so in September, I don't know when this is going to be filmed, but any Honda Jet owners or potential Honda Jet owners or pilots, we have a conference at the end of September, and it's our safety summit annual convention that I'm actually on the board for. So we're trying to make the Honda Jet even more safer.
I've been talking to some of your people about that because I've covered a lot of the accidents on Biz Jet TV, so yeah, I mean, coming in high fast, and then you land and the brakes don't kick in and you end up going off the end of the runway. That happens a lot.
Small tires, small brakes.
Yeah, and you know, going around is not a bad thing. Admitting that you've come in high or fast, it does happen, even to the best. It's like when a soccer player misses a penalty. Top soccer players miss penalties as well. So it's understanding that you're getting yourself into a situation where you messed up, just press the button, and the 737 you press the button, and you do your go around.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done go arounds a number of times, mainly because of the weather. But I did come in at high and fast once, and wasn't stable at the stabilized height, and we had to go around. It happens. You're tired. And it can happen, and you just have to admit that a lot of the private jet people don't do that. In particular, pilot owners that got their friends with them. It's not going to look good on my buddy if I suddenly abort the landing, and they push. But what you've got to understand is, and this is where training comes into it, and it's really, really important for because during training, too much training right now is all about engine failures. And I get, you need to do the engine failure stuff, but how many accidents happen because there was an engine failure? They're always.
I'm in complete agreement with you. Complete agreement.
So this is the thing that needs to happen. Scenario based training.
Yeah. How many engine failures are going to be right at V1 in a turbofan? There hasn't been a single. I don't know how many hours a Honda Jet has had, but there hasn't been a single engine failure. More likely you're going to be landing, how many times has it rained or how many times has it snowed? That's more likely. Going after something. Yeah, totally.
I mean, most of the things that kill people like yourself that are entrepreneurs and pilots is icing. They don't de-ice because people don't understand that you only need enough ice on your wing, the size of a grain of salt, which you can't see with a visible eye, and that you'll probably have that on one wing and not on another. So like the Phenom 300 that crashed out of Provo Airport on the 2nd of January this year. The guy rotated. There was ice on one wing, not on the other. It went boom. And it was lucky that 3 out of 4 people managed to walk away from that. The pilot that was flying.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'd met him actually years ago. He was a good, very, very nice person. He owned over $400 million in real estate. He was a network marketing guy. He made his money with New Skin, and he took the network marketing money and put it into real estate and multiplied it over time to allow himself to buy. He'd been flying.
What airport was that?
Provo. Okay. But classical situation. The airplane had been in a heated hangar all night. He pulled it out the hangar. Thought, they'll be on the runway in 5 minutes. We'll be okay. Refueled and figured, well, it's heated fuel. We'll be okay. And then it killed him. So
it was snowing.
Yeah, it was bad weather. Yeah. If he had known how to read the weather report properly, and he wasn't in so much of a rush to get going, he would have waited another 30 to 40 minutes to de-ice and paid the $4,500, which it cost, and then he'd still be alive today. But unfortunately, it's. When I was training with the airlines and in particular when I was doing my command upgrade, one of the things they were saying to us, if you are in doubt, any doubt you may have about de-icing, just de-ice.
Yeah.
And if you have to delay the flight or it costs the airline more money, just do it. There'll be no questions asked. And that always stuck in my mind. So every time I've been in doubt, even the minimum doubt, we'll just de-ice.
Yeah. Luckily, if you know, in 91, you don't have passengers that you have to hold to a schedule. So when in doubt, just delay it. I mean, that's the beauty of I'm very lucky that I can make my own schedule. And if I have to, you know, say, sorry, I can't make it, I have, you know, to get theiritis is very, that's what kills pilots. So you're right. And that's kind of the overall, and the get theiritis, and then there's icing, and then there's probably bad weather and thunderstorms and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing. I mean, I get, obviously, Mr. Entrepreneur that flies his own airplane is, oh, I'm going to do this deal. I've got this meeting to look at this new piece of real, and you've got that on your mind, and then you've got to fly this plane to get you there. And so it can be difficult sometimes to sort of separate these two roles between the pilot and the entrepreneur. And if the pilot says, no, sorry, we can't go. But, I had a very good friend of mine. He was both an airplane pilot and helicopter pilot. And he was flying the owner of a football club here in England, Leicester Football Club. And what they did is they used to land outside the stadium before the match, and then they'd take the boss in with the car. And then, because they couldn't land in the stadium when there were people in the stadium. But once the spectators had left the stadium, then he could land the helicopter. So every time they let the spectators leave, he would go and get the helicopter and land it in the stadium and then take off with the boss on board. Wow. And he said to the boss a number of times, he said, this coming out like that, if something were to happen, we're dead. And the boss turned around and said, well, I pay you a lot of money. The other pilots used to do this without umming and ahhing. And if you don't like it, you can leave and I'll hire somebody else. So he continued flying them. And then one day, as they're taking off, one of the pins that connected the two rotors went loose. The helicopter started doing that. This friend of mine, Eric, managed to control the helicopter away from the parking area where there were people. Regained control of the helicopter at about 20 feet from the ground, and then lost control at 8 feet from the ground. It crashed, killed everybody on board. It was all over the news, all over the world, and everything.
Just 8 feet?
Yeah. Because another guy I know was on the investigation committee, and he said, I don't know how he managed to regain control of the helicopter, because it was doing that. And then looking at what the cause of the failure was and the accident and everything. But, some miracle, he managed to regain control and straighten this thing out. And then he lost control again. So, he should have turned around to his boss and told him, we're not going to do this anymore because it's dangerous. In fact, when they were going to do the Olympic Games over in Australia, they were looking at landing helicopters in stadiums. And because of this particular area where you're going up and you have no forward movement, no forward speed, if a failure happens at that point, that's when the helicopter will crash. And so in Australia, they said, we're not going to do the helicopter thing in the stadiums for that reason. But, that was the whole organization committee and everything of that. When you're operating your own helicopter or plane or whatever, sometimes the boss will say to the pilot, oh, if, you get to the minimum, you can't see the runway, just land. I'm paying you a lot of money. I'll pay you an extra grand. And sometimes these people get pushed. Unfortunately, you read about this in the accident reports. And, you have to, in your case, you have to be very disciplined at saying to yourself, we're not doing this. We'll go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or we'll just de-ice. It's going to take us an hour. Who cares? We'll just drink coffee for an hour and wait for the de-ice truck to come and do its job. And then we'll go. And that's why, I'm starting a new flight school. I don't know if I told you. And we're going to be training people like yourself, scenario-based learning, training, all about scenario-based training, looking at the accidents, creating the scenarios, putting people through these things in the simulator, doing some ground school online as well, and then sending our instructors periodically to fly with people like yourself, just to see how you're doing, see how we can help you improve, and things like that. Because as you know, the insurance companies are getting more and more tighter now on the so-called pilot owners because of the number of accidents that are happening, and that have happened recently.
Yeah.
And and at the end of the day,
a lot of insurance companies have dropped onto jet, and that's something I'm dealing with because of those incidences. So that's why part of the reason why we have that safety summit. And yeah, it sounds like focusing on real world pressures and scenarios for your flight school would be really helpful, not just V1 cuts.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, I think, is really, really important. Now, what jet do you think you'll buy next? and what your business goals for the future. So obviously you've built your portfolio in the Northwest United States. You're thinking of going across the country, maybe up to Canada, Mexico. What's next?
International would be some next. Now it's harder to get financing, not impossible, harder to have boots on the ground. But it's in the US, real estate is like, is the bedrock of what our country is founded on, almost, because it's like ownership is, you have the deed, you have the ownership, it can't be taken away. So there's some more risks involved in going into international. As far as the next plane, I don't mind stopping for fuel, and I don't know. The Phenom 300 would be the logical next step. It's a really nice plane, but two more people. I have a saying: more people, more problems. I don't mind being restricted. Oh, sorry, I only have room for 4 people.
What about PC-24?
And
what about the Pilatus PC-24? That's
PC-24 is pretty nice. I sitting in it. There's all these buttons. There's a would actually feel like a step down technologically with
Yeah,
PC-24.
a lot of people say that. The avionics are not as easy as the Garmin 3000.
Yeah, there's a trackpad. I mean, that we don't need to track. Laptops don't have trackpads anymore. There is a rumor that it's moving to Garmin. I think it has to move to Garmin eventually. So we'll see. PC-24 is other than that. Front to the cabin where we're hanging out. Sometimes when I have another HondaJet pilot up front and I get to go in the back, I'm like, man, this is pretty nice. What am I missing?
Yeah.
The 24 has a really nice cabin. I mean, but I care about selfishly the front. It's very big too. It's very comfy at the 24 when I sat in it. It's just the avionics, but good range. 24 is definitely something that I would look into, but I'm very happy with the HondaJet right now. I mean,
everybody is. Everyone I speak to that owns a HondaJet say the same thing. They're all very happy.
So I'm more thinking about, I guess you're more Biz Jet, but I'm thinking I'm an L39. That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Oh yeah, right, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
So more not as practical, not practical at all, actually. Probably zero practicality, but more fun. And looking for partners into an L39 right now, or something like that. I don't know. That's probably a good
something for you, and I'll tell you once we finish the interview. Something else I'm up to. I'm sure you'll be interested. No, the real estate in the US is interesting. You say that because I know Grant Cardone quite well, and I had Ryan Secco on here, his pilot / vice president now, on here a few weeks ago. And I've interviewed Grant a number of times, and Grant tells me, he said, I've been all over the world. Every time I go to Dubai or London or Amsterdam, I always go and look at property, or real estate, as you guys call it. And at the end of the day, the United States is the best place in the world to invest in real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that, you can actually buy a house from somebody and buy the house, but they keep the mortgage and you pay them the mortgage. There's so much more flexibility in the bureaucracy of the deals that you can't do that in England. I mean, in England, if you go and buy a house from somebody, they pay their mortgage off. You can't go and take over their mortgage. It doesn't happen here because of the regulations, and you have to qualify for the mortgage. And while in the US, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can be very, very creative, and the US is a very big place. I mean, here in Europe, if we want to count the UK part of Europe, I mean, there are like 29 countries that speak 29 different languages that have 29. So there you are, you're investing in Budapest, and you're going into Budapest, in Hungary, and they speak Hungarian, and all the information on the contract is in Hungarian, and you need someone to translate it for you. Then the next day you're going into Paris, and it's all done in French, and they have different. I mean, it's just, well, in America, you've got a very large space, lots of houses, and lots of opportunity. So yeah, I understand. Stick to the US. Don't even bother coming over here.
Yeah, it's because not only you probably have to pay cash, for the property, and you can't get financing. Landowner rights. The reason why real estate is it's the best risk-adjusted investment you can make. Maybe could you make more investing in car washes? Sure, but the risk is a lot higher than real estate. I mean, adjusting for that risk, and now going international, it adds additional risk. Is it a 100-year deed versus you don't actually own it, and maybe it's just a lease, and it goes back to the government. Now in 100 years, maybe it doesn't really matter. But we have run into that issues where we look in Mexico and it's really a 100-year lease than an ownership. And in the U.S., ownership has somehow stayed rock solid, and for better or worse, that makes it a very good investment.
Yeah. So what about Bitcoin? What are your involvement with Bitcoin and other cryptos these days? Or is that the past now for you?
It's not completely the past. There still having investments in it, but main business now is focusing on expanding real estate portfolio, getting some more investment, and expanding our fund. But yes, definitely, I think that for a portfolio, you have to have a sizable amount on your portfolio, whatever sizable is to you, in Bitcoin. I don't know about other crypto, but I think that we're going to see countries start having a sizable amount of their net worth into Bitcoin. Current reserve currencies are going to start adding, and Bitcoin could become a reserve currency of some other countries. Yes. It's just been around the longest. It's been time tested. It's been attacked. It has the time value that you cannot replace with other currencies. You just can't.
And no one controls it. I interviewed Gary Cardone a few weeks ago. He's Grant's brother, and he's big into Bitcoin. And he says, forget all the other currencies. Just focus on Bitcoin. He said, because Bitcoin, no one, we didn't even know who invented it, but no one controls Bitcoin. It's not like Ethereum or all the other cryptocurrencies where, you've got a company behind it, you've got people, this stuff. Bitcoin is controlled by the people.
Yep. You're not going to see, 1,000x return in a year in Bitcoin. Yeah. But what you're giving up is the steady, it's going to increase. It's just a matter of time. It's volatile, just like any crypto, but it's going to, it's just a matter of time before it becomes more rare and there's a halvening and all that sort of stuff. And I think as countries realize that it's a good settlement currency, it's not going to be good for coffee, although with a Lightning network, it potentially could be, but it'll be good for really settlement. And that's kind of how we saw it, all the way back in 2012. I was like, wow, this is a one-way transaction. You can do a lot with it, with escrow, with everything, because it cannot be reversed and the value of it when you receive it.
Yeah. And you're into technology. You were there. You were working for the credit card company. You saw the problems, and you saw how Bitcoin made a lot of those problems go away. And you were in the right place. You had the right mindset. You understood the opportunity, and I think you're doing the right thing, is pulling money out and buying real estate, because that's something physical. You can see, you can sit in it, you can touch it, while Bitcoin is like stored out there in cyberspace. And if suddenly, the electric grid were to go down, you still have your properties.
Yep. Yeah, they're kind of the opposite, right?
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
It's very wise. Wise investing there. Thank you very much, John. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here on the show. Well, you made it to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this chat with John Schaff, the Honda Jet owner. And if you did, I encourage you to go and look at this other interview we did with the president or the CEO of the Citation Jet Pilots Association, David Miller, a few weeks ago, where he tells his story of jet ownership and how he uses the jet to build his business. Another great interview that we did recently. And also remember, get yourself a copy of The Quantum Economy if you haven't done so already, and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll find that below. Subscribe to Biz Jet TV if you haven't done so already, and also check out my articles in Av Buy magazine, the link below for that one too. That's all from me here on Biz Jet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.